What was Lynda like? Lynda always had a smile on her face, and all the kids loved her. Most people loved her, really. And she liked older people. When she worked at the bakery, there was a lady that had trouble with flour and things like that, and Lynda went and looked for the special flour so she could bake her bread, because she couldn't eat bread otherwise. And she would bake other things for her. She liked to cook, and she was a good cook. She better than I was, that's for sure. But anyhow, she loved kids. She got along with kids. She worked at Pretty Boy Elementary School, part-time, I think it was. And she would sit on the floor with all the kids around her, and somebody had asked her, "How did you learn how to get along with kids like that?" She says, "It's natural. I learned it from my mother." I said, "Oh, you sold them that?" Oh my. But anyhow, yes. And she always got along with kids. She was always babysitting somebody's kids. I remember once I went up there and she had these two little boys. I says, "Whose are these? I don't know." And she says, she was babysitting them. They were down the road from her. The mother was working and she was minding them. But she basically got along with most people. And she was a good kid as she was growing up. I mean, and her and her brother was like two peas in a pod. Usually kids, brothers and sisters, they scrabble together. But now, John still misses her. Yes, I do too. But we could never understand why things turned out that way for her. And Michelle's a lot like her mother. You know, she likes to cook, and she got two boys. She gets along with them. Michelle does daycare work. But Lynda was always there in the middle of doing everything. Whatever you were doing, she was there to help out. Ask my sister across the road. She always says, Lynda's always doing something. She helped with at Red House Run for a Christmas bazaar once. And she made, I think she said, for all the kids so that they could all have something. They had like a store and the kids would buy things from it. She made steering wheel covers. Between her and my sister, I was working about 10, 12 hours a day then. Anyhow, they were sewing up until 2 o'clock in the morning on these steering wheel covers and little car-shaped air fresheners to hang in the car, and hair ties for little kids' hairs. And I says, "How many you got in that box?" She says, "Oh, there was 100 of each." I said, "That was quite a bit of sewing the other night you guys were doing." She says, "We had fun." And she was always coming up with something like that.
Was she always a baker? Is that why she was working the bakery?
Well, she did several different things, but she was pretty good at baking. And she went to Grayson's food market. I don't know. She knew somebody she must have known somebody worked over there. And she had taken, I think, cake decorating course, and she went there and they gave her a try and she was decorating the cakes back there. Yeah.
Was she the oldest or the youngest child?
She was my oldest. I only had two. So, yeah, she was the oldest. And she was my first. Yeah.
Were you guys very close?
What?
Were you very close?
Yes. Yes, we were. Until, we'll see, when she lived home until she married Steve, or Gary, whatever anybody wants to call him. Anyhow, then they had the house built up here on top of the hill as you made the turn, that first house. It was he and her, they talked to Pride Mark, anyhow, they had the house built. They bought the piece of ground for my mom and dad. And The kids were, I think Michelle was 15 when he decided he was going to move away. I don't know what all went on, but he put a for sale sign out there on the front lawn. The first time I saw it, I had said to Lynda, I says, "Hey, what's that thing on your front lawn?" She said, "Talk to Gary about it." I said, "Uh-oh, he's Steve. When she's mad at him, he was Gary." So, anyhow, then they didn't get a sale for it, and the sign disappeared. And I says, "Well, that's good. They'll be here for a while." Lo and behold, then the sign was back on the lawn again. And it stayed there for quite a while, and they did sell it. But he bought a house up on St. Mary's Lane in Harper County, off of Route 24. You know, and as far as I know, he still lives there. But everything seemed to have changed after they went up there. He got too far away from his mother-in-law. I couldn't stop in whenever I wanted to. Because, well, on Monday we used to have garbage day, and I'd take the garbage can up the hill. And for Tuesday morning, well, Tuesday was garbage day, but I'd take it up on Monday, and I'd stop in on Monday morning to have coffee. Only thing, Monday morning was his day off. I have an idea he didn't like that. I learned that afterwards, but I guess I'm mean. I really didn't care. So I said, "I'll only spend an hour. I'll go home." So then the rest of the day was his if he wanted. I know I'm bad, but I can't help it.
Do you love your daughter?
Yeah, it was my daughter, and I wanted to see her, and my granddaughters. And Michelle and I were always very close, because when Lynda and Steve got married, they lived in an apartment at Maple Crest. Maple Crest? Yeah, I think it was Maple. It was in Middle River, off of Compass Road back that way. Anyhow, they raised the rent 3 times the first year. Well, not the first. Yeah, 3 times the first year they were there. Steve says, "My pay doesn't go this way." I mean, after all. So we finished the upstairs, and we said, "Well, you have a bedroom upstairs, you can eat downstairs in the kitchen. We all enjoyed the downstairs, and your bedroom can be upstairs." So then they moved back here, and Michelle was just little then. So anyhow, they were here for 3 years, and so naturally Michelle got very attached, and we got very attached to her. Because when she was born, well, they weren't living here when she was born, but anyhow, when she was born, she was only 5 pounds, and my husband would sit her right in the palm of his hands, just like she was a baby doll. And he and her were so close together. We had her high chair sit right next to him at the kitchen table. And she did everything he did. If he's reading the paper, she was reading the paper. If he was eating, she was eating. And he would steal things out of her plate, so she would take things from his plate. And it was hilarious, really. It really was. So when they built the house up there and he moved up there, naturally Peck and I would go up and down that road. We would see them. I guess we got a little too close, so after a while Gary says he didn't say this to us, but we assumed he wanted to get away from here. Well, things changed after that.
How?
A lot. Well, it seemed like he wasn't as friendly as he was after he moved away. So I guess he figured he had his family to him, not to that we were there to interfere. I don't know. He was more mixed up with his cars and the guys that ran cars and things like that. Well, okay, I can understand a hobby. And Lynda was working, and she worked at, well, wherever she could get a job, but she did baking for people, and she worked at the Grayston supermarket. She decorated the cakes. She also worked part-time at Pretty Boy Elementary School and that, and she just did odd and end different things wherever she could make a few dollars or whatever. So she could have spend money to do what she wanted to do with her girls. And Steve was military at the time. He belonged to the Air National Guard. And he spent quite a bit of time there. And he made rank. He was, I always get sergeants mixed up. First sergeant, second sergeant, whatever. I think first sergeant comes first. I don't know. But anyhow, he made the rank. And I know he was working toward master sergeant. I don't know if authority, he wanted to show the authority at home or what. I don't know. But after they were up there, it seemed like her life was not the way it was.
Was she happy with the move, unhappy with the move?
I think so, that she was unhappy with it because she loved the house up here. Well, this was the one she picked. The one that was up there is the one he found. And it wasn't exactly what she wanted, but as she lived there, she got accustomed to it. She liked it, and she would do different things with it and that. And I guess, all in all, she did grow to like the house there because she says that if they got the divorces, she wanted the house. So I assume she learned to like it.
Where were you that night when it happened?
That night, I'm trying to think. I was here. In fact, I was asleep. I have a hearing problem. I wear a hearing aid now. I'm completely deaf in this ear. That happened back in 1980. I had a brief heart attack. Anyhow, the phone rang and rang, and I did not hear it. But I was laying on that side, and I didn't hear the phone ring. My sister across the road came over and banged on the door. She banged loud enough, it got me up. And she said, well, Michelle had called Wilma and told her, get Grandma. And Wilma says, Michelle says, I got to take you to the hospital. Lynda's been injured. She's been shot. I said, what? Well, I think all blood drained out of me at that point. I said, I can't believe this. And she said, don't worry about it, I'll take you. And Wilma and I went off to shock trauma. And that's where we were all night. So, I had worked that day. I'm trying to think. I know I was asleep because Wilma banged on the door to get me up.
What was it like, that car ride over?
What was
that
what?
car ride over, what was that like? Driving to the hospital.
What was it like? I don't know if I can put that in words. Because from the time they told me she was shot, that she got shot, I think I turned cold. It was terrible. I just couldn't believe it. Wilma told me I turned white. So, I don't know. But Wilma did the driving because I knew I wouldn't be able to. And the worst, we weren't sure exactly where we were going. We couldn't find a parking lot. Shock trauma's over there off of Green Street or something like that. And we found this one parking lot. There was one opening on one end. And I said, there might not be anybody there. I said, I think we'll park here because we can walk right across the street up a little bit to where. And when we got in, well, we just asked questions to find out where to go. And when I saw Lynda, I just couldn't believe it. I don't know. I think it was beyond any doubt that she was not going to survive it, because it was terrible. They had her all packed for, and blood was everywhere. It was terrible. And they said, the doctors and technicians there said, we keep giving her blood, but it keeps coming out as fast as it goes in. And then after a while, well, Darren and Michelle and Ferdinand and Steffi, they all came up to the hospital. But Steve was the one, he acted like he was going to pass out half the time. And we kept saying, what's wrong? You need to be strong for the girls. And he said, I haven't had anything to eat all day. Well, at that point, Ferdinand's father and I went downstairs to the cafeteria to get some coffee and something for them to eat on. And he seemed fine drinking his coffee and eating the buns, but he kept acting like he wanted to pass out. I guess that was so he could get some sympathy. I don't really know. He kept saying, you all have to understand how I feel. That's my wife laying in there. I says, yes, and my daughter.
Where were the girls?
They were there in the waiting room with us. I have to give it to them. I thought they were holding up pretty well. But they didn't go back. They didn't let them all go back to see how she looked. I got to go back and Steve went back. He didn't stay back. He came back out. He said he couldn't stand it. But he may have gone back later afterwards. I don't know. Because I took a walk down the hall. I had to get away. What were you saying?
How long was she in the hospital until she passed?
That was the 29th. Well, by the time we left the hospital, it was late. It was early in, well, I don't know what time it was when I left the hospital. But Steve had said she had written that she wanted, if anything ever happened to her or when she died, she wanted her organs donated. Well, I talked to the technician and I said, if she's going to donate her organs, what does that mean? What has to be done? She says, we will have to keep feeding her the blood for the next, I want to say 24 hours. I'm not sure I remember that directly. But anyhow, and I said, for that long? She says, yes, until we can take the organs from her and whatever and get them into refrigeration. And I says, I might be cruel. I says, but at this point, I says, I feel she suffered enough. I says, so if you disconnect the machines and stop feeding it to her, I said, is she still with us? They said, no, the only thing's keeping her alive, keeping her, well, liable, that is the blood flowing in. She says she's not doing any of it on her own. I says, well, she told me, she says, you have the choice. I says, does he have the choice? She said, no. She said, you can say what you want. And I says, well, she's my daughter, and I'd rather she went to rest. I think she suffered enough. She says, your wishes are granted. And that's when she went. So I would say the 30th of September she was gone, because that was the next morning. So, yeah. So maybe I did something against her by not letting her organs go to someone else, but I just couldn't do that. I couldn't do it.
She was suffering. She wasn't.
Yeah, yeah. I thought she suffered enough. She didn't deserve that. She was a good person. She would do for almost anybody. I don't say not almost anybody. I think she did to everybody she knew. Anybody asked her for something, she was willing to do it. And she was good for all the kids around here, all the time. But I miss her a lot. We could have some real good talks.
What is your understanding of what happened? What is your understanding of what happened? Did you talk, sound like you talked to the lady who reported the crime who was in there?
No, I didn't talk to anybody that worked there or whatever, but I don't know who talked to the ambulance attendant, but they said that the ambulance attendant said when they got there, I guess she was alive then, and the only thing she said was help me. And then they took her and put her on a stretcher. And I think by the time she got to the hospital, she was about gone. Because she wasn't able to say anything. I don't think she ever knew I was there. Because she did not look. She was very pale and, like I said, all this blood everywhere. And they were packing her, and I moved the sheet on the side, and the whole bed was full of blood. I know I wasn't supposed to do that, but I wanted to find out how bad she was. And it was dreadful. It really was. It was dreadful. It was terrible. How anybody could do that to her, I don't know. It's how anybody could use a shotgun on a human being, much less than anything else. Jeez, I don't know. But
Police say that they think that she knew, maybe she didn't recognize them, but whoever went in there with one purpose and had to have been somebody who knew her. Do you believe that's true?
I don't know if they knew her. If they knew her, I don't know if she knew them. I really don't know. I really don't know. But I feel somebody wanted her out of the way for some reason. I went to that store once after that to see what it looked like. I'd never been to that store before. To see what it looked like inside. Where could somebody hide that, because the store was closed when this happened? But I couldn't figure out where. I mean, it was a grocery store. There's stuff everywhere. So I don't know how this person was in the store without anybody knowing they were there. I only know what I feel. And I feel that this was all purposely done, that it wasn't accidental. And that, well, that lady was so scared, I guess I would be too, that I don't know when the phone call was made for emergency. I don't know how long or when it happened. I wasn't there. But evidently they were all gone by the time any emergency equipment or police or anybody else got there. And if it was, I know this is only thought, and it's my thought, that if it was purposely done, It was set up so that they could get away before anybody got there. That's only what I think. I do not know. I do not know. But I can only figure one person would have to gain from that.
In the police report, it does say that shortly after the murder, they did go to her house, that they had reviewed some court or some documents, and they had or interviewed people, I'm not sure which, and
Okay.
discovered that she had a relationship, and they described him in the police report as her estranged husband. What was, of course, in these sort of situations, they always look to the husband first, because a lot of the time that's who it is. What was their relationship at the time that this happened?
At the time that happened, that was all during the time that she was wanting a divorce from Gary, from Stephen. Yeah. That she didn't leave the house, she stayed there. And that's what she said. She had gotten counsel, so, and that's what she was told, that to put the divorce into proceedings, that she needed to leave the house. And she said, no, he can leave the house. She says, because I want the house. Evidently wasn't going to let that happen. So I don't know. I know she was still living there, but I knew they were not getting along.
Her daughter lived there at the time too, correct?
Yeah. At that time, Michelle was there. Yeah. Well, wait a minute. Stephanie was there too. No, Stephanie wasn't there. Stephanie was in Virginia. Could have been. Wait a minute. That was, wait a minute. It was 99. Michelle was living there, I know that, because Donovan was a baby, and they had the playpen up there, because I remember Michelle said she put Donovan in the playpen in the living room. Stephanie wasn't living there.
Michelle was the one that answered the door when the police came.
That's right, and Michelle and Darren were living there, and the baby, Donovan. Yeah, and Michelle was the one that the officer put the handcuffs on. And she says, what's this?
Has she ever told you what that was like?
Terrible. Oh, yeah. She says, I couldn't believe this. She says, if somebody injures my mother, she's in a hospital, and they're going to arrest me. Yeah. So, but evidently they didn't do it. I was not there, so I didn't see what went on. But, no, she has not, I don't think she talks to her father at all since. Yeah. And she's not afraid to say it either. She said, oh, I don't talk to him. But I haven't seen him in years. He did come down here, 2 years ago, I think, to see my son. John was here. In fact, he had called John, and John was here when he came down. And it was something about a motor out in the car, in the garage. My son's got all kinds of things out in that garage. That's why the garage is never finished. Can't move none of that stuff. It's bigger and heavier than I am. But anyhow, that's one of those things.
That's the last time you saw him.
That was the last time I saw him, and he was outside. I didn't talk to him. I didn't talk to him. He was out there. I saw this vehicle come down. I said, who's that? And I thought it was going across the road, but instead it pulled in my driveway. I looked out there and I saw him get out of the truck. So, no, I didn't go out there. John was out there. But I know them two talk.
Really?
Yeah, occasionally. Occasionally. They talked that day, I know. But I asked John, I says, what do you want? He says, it was all about that motor that was out there. So I don't go into that. I don't know anything about motors. I only know when I turn the key on the car, I want it to work. That's the way it goes.
What's it been like with all these years passing?
It's hard, especially holiday time. Especially holiday time, yes. She was always, she may not be here just about the time you expect her to be here, but she would be here. And she would always bring something. She'd always bake something and bring something. Yes. And all the kids loved Aunt Lynda. Yes. All the kids did. And my nephew Tony and Lynda were like brother and sister, because when they were young, they were with each other all the time. What one got into, the other got into. Even back in school days when they were doing things they weren't supposed to, like in high school, when they take a day off that they weren't supposed to. Uh-huh. I said, you know, I'll find out about it if you do. Sure enough, I did. Mm-hmm. One time was not a good one either.
I'm sure.
Yeah, she had this little red Mustang. And they cut out of school and decided to take a ride. Tony says, have you ever been down this road? And Lynda says, no. And Tony says, neither have I. And this is their story, they tell me. So they decided to explore. Well, the road, I saw the road afterwards, went down like this. Well, somewheres along the way, there was something wrong with her brakes, because they're going down this hill, and all of a sudden, she puts on a brake and she don't have any brakes. The next thing you know, well, she was knocked out. The car hit a tree. That was the end of that Mustang. The tree, the front of the Mustang was like this.
Now, one of the things is that this grocery store is in a very isolated area.
Yes, it is. And it's on Whiteford Road. And it's in Harford County. And I'm trying to think what, it seems to me, let me see, St. Mary's, I don't know if the 24 goes to Whiteford, I think so, because St. Mary cuts off at 24. And that is right at the intersection, Whiteford Road and 24. And that grocery store is on the right-hand side. And at that time, there were trees, woods all on that side and partially in the back. Across from it, the ground went down like that, and it was a field. And way over there was a house, and way up there was a house. There was nothing right there. It was isolated. There was, you know, it's really country out there. Yeah. It really is. So evidently nobody else heard what went on. It was inside the building.
Yeah. Because usually we ask people if there's anybody out there who knows something. But really in this case, there probably aren't a lot of witnesses. There probably aren't a lot of people.
There probably wasn't anybody there because it was at night after the store was closed. And there probably wasn't anybody there at all. Because, well, at that time of the night, the people would have been in the house anyway. And I know when my son and I rode up that way to see what it looked like, he said, gee, Gads, there's nothing here. Over there's a house, over there's a house, there's a field, woods, bushes. Only thing I could see is the people that, excuse me, that were involved in this, doing it, they had to have had a vehicle or something to get away, to leave the place. But if they didn't put any lights on or whatever, nobody would have even paid any attention until they got away from the building. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's my assumption anyway.
Well,
So,
there's also a chance that, and I've had victims tell me this, that, sometimes the killer, whoever this person is, maybe they get skittish around that day when the anniversary rolls up, or maybe they've slipped and said something, or done something, and maybe people are afraid to give that information, or maybe, if you could say something to those people, what would you want to say?
to those people that may have saw something, it would really mean a lot to us to know what happened to our daughter. That why would somebody do this to her? And how did they manage to hide in a store after all the store? Because I always thought they checked out stores when they closed them to check around to make sure everything's in place and everything. I worked for Best over here on Pulaski Highway for 6 years. And when a store closed, you had to straighten up the place. You had to put things in place and things like that before you could go home. I mean, they only gave a certain amount of time to do that in, but we still had to do that. And if there'd been somebody in the store, we would have certainly seen them. Because the people go back in the restrooms and that, and we had a small lunchroom too, where you ate your lunch. They checked all that out. And the warehouse where we got the merchandise from, because we were back and forth putting merchandise out, and that, I mean, I don't think there was any place that anybody could have hid that wouldn't have been noticed. And that's why I was wondering. The store was closed. How come someone who wasn't working, I mean, she was decorating the cakes, and there was another lady back there with her, but before the store before they close it up for the night, somebody has to check out the place. Evidently they didn't. I don't know, not unless there was some secret hideaway someplace that this person, evidently the person who worked there at one time, I would think, if they knew that much about the place. I don't know. It's all kinds of things have gone through my mind that doesn't have any answer.
There's lots of theories. There's a lot of different variables.
Yes, yeah. That, I don't know why anybody would do something like this. She wasn't a person to do things against other people, other than maybe Gary Stephen, because they had their differences.
Well, if you could say something, to this killer who's out there, and they're watching this interview right now, and you can say something to them about what they've taken away from you and the pain that they've caused, what would you want to say to them?
That if they felt the way that I feel after losing my daughter, I think they would understand that that was not the thing to do, that you don't take a person's life like this. If you have a difference, talk it out. Don't kill somebody. No, that this really hurts forever and ever and ever. It just never goes away. And they really hurt our family, really badly. Not just her, but all of us. And God didn't create lives to be taken that way. And I don't know why they would want to do something to her like that. She wasn't a person to do things against people. At least I didn't know about it. A very loving person. But
How has it been like for her daughters raising their children without her?
well, they don't even know their grandmother other than a picture. Her grandchildren do not know. I mean, they don't have a grandmother to relate to. And I know Michelle's lost without her. Yes. And I think Stephanie is too. I think she just keeps it all in. Because if she lets it out, maybe she just feel worse than what she does otherwise. But Corey has never seen his grandmother. Neither has Marissa. And Donovan, he knows her by picture. He was just a little baby. He never got to have his first birthday. She was gone, and his birthday was the next month. And Isabella also. So, they took a big part of our family away. Yes. Yes, it's really a sad point. It's a big ache in my heart. It really is. She was my first and the first to be gone. It hurts. Really hurts deeply. I wish I could wave a magic wand and bring her back, but that doesn't happen.